Welcome to Discerning Faith Podcast. I am Daryl,
I am Nathan.
and we're going to continue getting deeper into theology with Job. Actually, first with the second and third amigo. And we're going to kind of just keep, talking about, what's going on with Job, and then his friends' reactions, and then Job's reactions, and just see what theology we can find in there and what we can learn from it. So we heard from Eliphaz last time, or Eliphaz, or however you say it.
Yep.
And so we'll move on to Bildad. So,
all right. So chapters 8, 18, and 25 are where Bildad speak. Again, we're kind of doing this grouping so you can see the characters themselves, so it won't be as you normally would read it, but trying to get an idea of what each of them are really trying to pull out and try to advise their friend with, because again, they are described as Job's friends throughout, so let's not rag on them too much of, they were terrible friends or whatever. So they're trying to help Job after all his tragedy, and they're going to say some of the correct things, some wrong things as well, as we've already seen. So we'll see if we keep up the thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs yeah. But so starting off with Bildad in chapter 8, he first says that God does not subvert justice, he does not cast away the blameless, and he does not uphold the wicked. As far as my evaluation of that statement, I think it'd probably depend on what he means by each of those verbs. He does not subvert justice, like he doesn't undermine it, yes. But God also allows injustice to go for a time on this earth as well. So he's just talking about, God's not unjust. That, well, yeah, I completely agree with that. God is not unjust. God is just. I can go with that statement. He does not cast away the blameless, yet sometimes the blameless are caught up in events of life. So again, depends on your definition of the verb there, I think, and what you exactly mean by that. He does not uphold the wicked. Well, he allows the wicked to linger. Does that mean he's upholding them? Depends on what he means by that as well. Overall, I think he means positively toward God in all of that, and so I generally like the statement he makes there, but it really depends on definitions that we're using for how theologically accurate is the statement, how much is line up with what we see on this earth and eternally as well. So
right. Well, and we talked about last time how God stays his hand sometimes against wickedness to allow for his mercy as well.
Yep.
So ultimately, yes, God is always just, but he does allow wickedness for a time to hopefully that some will come back to him. So, or come to him to begin with.
Yes.
So he also talks about how if Job's sons sin, then God casts them away in judgment, which kind of harkens back to something we talked about last time.
Partying every day of the week, well, there's good odds that maybe they were caught up in some of their own sin and all this as well. So I guess trying to give your friend a hard truth there, maybe your children died because they were horrible, wicked sinners.
Yeah.
That's something that will really comfort them after losing their children.
And we're not going to get into Job's response yet, but he does not ever respond in a positive or negative towards this. So it kind of makes you think that there's at least some truth to it.
Yeah. So we don't know for certain, but it seems like, there's a chance that is a true statement. We don't know for certain.
Yeah.
I do like this next one. He says that we should search out the wisdom of the past. And that is, overall a very good statement. We don't want to obviously, there's ditch on both sides of the road. You want to deify the past and all these people are always so much wiser. There was just as much wickedness and sinfulness then as there is now. And the most modern thing on the other side is not always the best thing either. And there's just, vice versa. But things that are from the past that have endured truths and saying and wise sayings to live life by that have endured for a reason, because God has probably preserved it to some degree or another. And so there is I think this is a pretty positive statement overall, where it's like, don't just listen to whatever the most modern new thing is. Look at the examples that have come before us, the people who have come before us, the stories that have come before us that can teach us. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing now. We are literally searching out the wisdom of the past in Job as well. So overall, it seems to be a very good statement to me. Like, yes, see what history and God's work through it has taught us and can continue to teach us as well.
Well, and another point is, we didn't really hit this at the beginning like I think I meant to, but Job... Sorry, I have a cattail in my face. But Job is typically placed around the time of the patriarchs. So during Genesis, around sometime between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
I'm in there now, and so it's something I caught in one. I don't remember what chapter it was, but it mentions Ethiopia at one point. but the exact translation is the land of Cush. So it's seems to be at least, post Noah times and all that. So it was just a little snippet of, okay, this at least somewhat helps to date, though still is a wide range of what it could have been. So
yeah. So he's either just a little bit before the patriarchs or about the same time. So so speaking of the wisdom of the past, this is one of probably the oldest books.
Yes.
Maybe not necessarily when it was written, but the story itself is from one of the oldest times.
Yep.
And we don't know the author, so just so you are
I have read some speculation that it's one of the characters we'll meet later. It's like, that's a nice idea to me, but there's no actual indication that is 100% true or not. So we'll see about that.
There's no clear evidence for sure.
Yes.
So, and then he also says that those who forget God perish.
In the end, yes.
Yeah.
As far as in this life and how quickly they'll perish, that's a different statement. But
we've kind of hit this a lot, so I don't want to over belabor it. But yes. So depends on the timeline we're talking about. But yes, ultimately that is a true statement.
Mm-hmm. So overall, pretty good statements from him so far. We jump ahead to chapter 18. He says that, Job is insulting his friends and he hurts himself with anger. And overall, as we're going to get into Job and his statements again, as we talked about, but overall, I think he's pretty well right that, yes, Job, you're insulting your friends again. Life has started out with positive praise for Job, and then Job continues to say, "Oh, you're undermining, or you're speaking corruptly yourselves, or this, that, or the other." It's like, yeah, you're insulting us, and you're hurting yourself with all the anger and frustration you feel. And I think a lot of Job's statements do reflect that.
Agreed.
But we'll get into the details on that later. He says that the wicked are also snared and destroyed. Again, as we've talked about multiple times, depends on your timeline that you're looking at. In the end, yes. In this life, sometimes not. Mm-hmm. I think of some particularly wicked people who I know are hurting people I care about very much right now, and how they're very much schemers. And so it's like, I would kind of like them to see them caught in their own snares, and to, it says such in the Proverbs and the Psalms as well, that Lord turn their schemes upon their own head. And so it's like, that's something that I would like to see happen from time to time, but I know it doesn't always happen. So it's a matter of, can you endure in those situations when the punishment does not come on a wicked speedily? So hopefully I can talk with a little clarity. The cat's not bumping into my mic.
I think you did fine. And then in chapter 25, he asked how anyone can be righteous in light of God's power, which is a good statement. Mm-hmm. It's true.
And the only way I can say is, by the grace of God and the sacrifice of his son, can one be made righteous in front of God. So, above ourselves, nope, can't do it. So overall, Bildad's, again, we think of the Three Amigos as everything they say is wrong, or it can be an easy thought to get into our framework. It's like, Bildad says a lot of very positive things. Find wisdom in the past. Don't forget God. Remember God's character. The wicked are ultimately going to be destroyed, and remember who we are in light of God's power. It's like all of those really good statements overall. I actually really like Bildad and what he says. And the chapter 25, when he essentially says, look, we are worms compared to God. So I feel like Bildad, as far as his character, is very humble, very much looking to outside of himself, looking to the past, looking to who God and his character is, self-examining, who am I in relation to that? Now, ultimately, all of the friends are going to get charged with not speaking enough or fully. I got to remember the exact phrasing, but God does charge each of the friends with faults as well.
Right.
And so I think for Bildad, he may not go far enough in talking with Job about all this. He kind of, holds his peace and just stops short of what he should have said. So, and that's speculation again, but just looking at all of his statements all back to back, it's like he's overall speaking very good truth. So I think that where he probably falls short and God charges him with, he didn't speak what is right of me. I think that's actually God's phrasing now that I think about it, is that Bildad didn't keep going speaking of what is right with God there. So
yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Take it with a grain of salt, but again, I generally actually like Bildad and what he's trying to say with all this. So
there's that. So moving on from Bildad, we'll move into Zophar.
So shortest of our three amigo speakers.
Yep. It actually seemed to get progressively shorter between the three of them. So Zophar says in chapter 11 that God's wisdom is infinitely greater than Job's purity.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
He's infinitely greater than any of our quote unquote purity, as pure as we tend to think of ourselves. Like, nope, is whatever God's doing, he has reason for it.
Yep. And then God exacts less than Job's iniquity deserves. The wages of sin is death.
And
we all have sin.
And yet we're still alive.
Yeah.
As a true statement for any of us. That one always, anytime I go back through it, that one always kind of speaks home to me. Get off my lap, you cat. He is way needy right now. Yeah, that one is always one that sticks out and is always very humbling. It should be very humbling for us. And like, yes, there is such deep truth to this that, you know, even the most minor of our rebellious infractions against God and his will is deserving of death. And so the mercy that he bestows on us, reminding ourselves of that, and that we are still alive, not by anything we have done, only by God's mercy, should hit us very impactfully every time we go and we reflect upon such. So,
well, it kind of goes back to, I think it was last episode that I talked about, you know, reflecting on and asking God to reveal iniquity to us, because we are so inundated with sin and so full of sin, even after Jesus comes in and dwells, that we don't even recognize sin a lot of the time. And so, you know, I think this is something that might be happening with Job. Spoiler alert. I think that he might not see his own sin for what it was, because outwardly he allowed himself to fall into the trap of, well, look at all this I do for you, God. Look at everything, you know, I'm clearly more righteous than that guy over there. So comparison theology is very dangerous.
Yes.
It is death. So, yeah.
And the last one from chapter 11, he says that if we put away sin from ourselves and from our house, we find hope. Yes. Now, granted, how much of that we can do in our own strength is a big question as well. Again, we cannot make ourselves pure in ourselves and put away sin altogether ourselves. We cooperate with God. We cooperate through the blood of Christ and sacrifice. We cooperate with the Spirit and its transformation of our lives and having the sin removed from us. But overall, just the statement of, hey, less sin in you and less sin for your family is going to bring about more hope overall. Like, yeah, that's a generally good statement. I guess it also might depend on what you say hope is. Like, is it like we're never going to find trouble again?
Right.
No, not necessarily. But overall, that we're going to have brighter lives from removing sin from our lives through the grace of God. So,
you said something that's going to make me go down another rabbit trail.
Wonderful. Or cat trail in this case.
Yes. It made me think of, you talked about, you know, we cooperate. And there's a ditch on both sides of the road with that, right? You know, there are people like me who used to say, well, God's got to do it all, so what do I do? You know, I can't do anything, so I just sit back.
Or if I'm doing any sin, it's really, I'm cooperating with God's plans for what's going on in my life. It's all what God wanted me to do if I do this sin. No.
Right. I said, you know, you can fall into that trap of, well, I'll sit back and God will fix things. Well, God, you didn't fix things. Well, you had something you needed to do. Or that falling into like what we think I would contend Job fell into of, I do it all myself, and I show my righteousness by all my deeds. And again, I'll quote this again, but you know, our righteousness is as filthy rags. And so we have to be careful not to trust in ourselves too much, but also not to make sure we don't forget that God typically has us work out things. And, you know, work out our salvation with fear and trembling.
Yes.
That means that we cooperate with the Spirit working in us. Through his power alone. It's nothing we're doing other than just being complicit in what he's trying to do. So I think it's good just to remember that we have to be careful with both of those extremes. So, yeah.
Let's see. Those are chapter 11 ones. Yeah, so chapter 20. Okay.
So chapter 20, he says his own thoughts are in turmoil from Job's rebuke. So this is a specific response to something Job says.
But as far as like remembering our typical framework, like, oh, you know, they're just going at each other. He's actually, this statement shows that he is taking in what Job says seriously, and he's really contemplating the truthfulness of it. It's not that they're just bickering back and forth, that these guys are trying to get to some sort of understanding with what's going on in the situation. That, at least from Zophar's end, he's really trying to listen into his suffering friend and everything he's saying about the situation as well. So, again, give a little bit more grace to, particularly, I think, Bildad and Zophar. Eliphaz, I think, probably is the one who draws the most of the stereotypical grief from it all, but they are trying to work through this together. It's not just they're just trying to rain on his bad day when it rains and floods. They're trying to contribute to that. So
right.
Zophar also says that the wicked will not persist, but instead meet their downfall. We've seen the kind of reflections of this several times throughout the Three Amigos so far, and so it depends on when are you talking about this, because they might persist for a time, they might accumulate wealth, they might accumulate power, they might make people's lives miserable for a long time, for decades even. Ultimately, yes, they will meet their downfall. God will see them before the judgment seat. So, but exactly when he means by that, it's a little bit clear. So, yeah.
Well, and we don't know if this is almost a accusation towards Job of, if you stay in your wickedness, you won't persist.
Right.
And so that could be like, this is all falling on you because you are wicked.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that sense sometimes. I don't know if it's quite as clear with Zophar or Bildad as it is for what's the first amigo's name again?
Eliphaz,
yeah. So it's not as straightforward, but you wonder if that is some of the barb that's in there, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
so
that's another thing. It's hard always to read what intents are into written word as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
But overall, I like what Zophar has to say. God's wisdom is great. He doesn't punish us as we deserve. Let's stop sitting and have our household stop sitting as well. And I'm trying to listen to you, friend, when you're going through a hard time here. It's like, overall, again, I think they get a little bit worse of a rap than they deserve in the end. And I think it might be the same thing with Zophar, as I speculate on Bildad in that maybe he just doesn't go far enough at trying to reach out to Job, and so he didn't fully speak right what he was supposed to Job through all this. That's speculation again, take it with a grain of salt, but a potential read on what exactly his part in needing to repent is by the end of it. So
yeah. So I guess let's get into Job's responses.
Yeah. How much time do we got for getting in starting the dive?
10 to 15 minutes probably for sticking to close to 30 minutes. So
let's see if we can get through the part ones on each of the friends then. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right. So Job himself, going back, time warping a little bit here to chapters 1 and 2, and because he's going to be the one that bounces back and forth between a lot of them. And he's going to have a lot of responses to these three amigos, and we're going to kind of summarize what he's responding to in particular with each of those. So, yeah. I know at the beginning that God, again, kind of praises his character and everything. Job is one who we know early on is making the sacrifices for his partying children, lest they curse God. So that's one where it's like, again, he's trying to watch out for the sin of others to at least some degree. Also, like, why don't you just stop them from partying or potentially cursing God? It's a weird little, I don't know, dichotomy is the word that comes to mind. I don't think it's actually the word I want there, but it's like, okay, he's trying to do good here, but should he be doing more? Should he be, trying to correct them harder on the situation, or is this good? Is he doing it out of faithfulness to God? Is he doing it out of self-righteousness? It doesn't really give us a read on his motivation between offering these sacrifices on behalf of his party children. So.
And it could be that, the clues make us think that his children were adults.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe he felt that it was not his place anymore to rebuke, but just to pray for, because they're old enough to make their own decisions, which that sounds like a very American ideal. But because, parenting doesn't stop just because they're grown, but, maybe that's something that's kind of playing into it too. So, yeah. And then of course we talked about this, I think last time, but he does respond after all of this happens on the same day. God gives and takes away, bless his name, except good and adversity. So he, again, I'll make the point that he kind of speaks about God, but does not speak to him after all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is somewhat telling, but it's still a good response.
Yes. So,
actually a much better response than most would have. So yeah.
Well, us would probably just go down the rabbit hole a lot quicker and into, I'm just going to be very mad at God and speak whatever I want to him instead. So after a week of sitting in silence with his friends, though, he decides to finally speak up again. And he says, I curse the day that I was born. was a horrible day. Let's just say that it was a very bad day, and let's just throw it in the dumpster. It was a bad day. I don't know why I was even born. This is all miserable. He says that in death, everyone finds equality, essentially, but he can't find death. He wishes that he could find death. I gotta remember why I typed up this proverb here. I had a proverb of a note here. Proverbs 8:36. Click. 36. And this is kind of a statement where it's talking about wisdom in that proverb. Okay. And so Job seeking after death reminded me of this proverb. And so it talks about that he who sins against me, in this case, the me is wisdom. So he who sins against wisdom wrongs his own soul, and all those who hate me love death. And Job right now is loving death. He is seeking after it right now. For reasons we can understand if we're in those dark times, we're in the valley of the shadow of death and everything, where it's like, I'd just rather be done with everything right now instead. I think it's something that we can relate to various extremes and whatnot. But if we are in those times and we truly are fixated on that mindset, we're not acting wisely, as the proverb would say there. We're loving death too much, and so we are fixated on that rather than what is wisdom, what is the fear of the God, what is he doing in this situation instead. So that is the kind of bringing up again, cursing the day of your birth, wishing you were never born, saying, oh, death is so great because, we're all equals, whether we're poor or we're the king or whatever, we're all equal in death. There is going to be a goodness in what God brings about after our lives are over on this earth, but let's not glorify and deify death as something either, because God still has a good plan for this earth as well.
Well, and when you think about it, like he literally, it's a weird relationship he starts to have with death. Like somehow death is this release and the only way that he could get out. And again, I think in our humanity, we can kind of understand it. He's lost everything that brought meaning to his life, and life is really hard. If one of those things happened, maybe you can cope, maybe it's okay. Few of those things happen, it's a little hard, but maybe. But when all of that happens, it's understandable. So I want to be careful.
Yes.
But someone who trusts in the Lord, response should be what Paul says in Philippians 1:21 through 24. For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. If I am to go on living in the body, this will mean fruitful labor for me. Yet what shall I choose? I do not know. I am hard pressed between the two. I desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is better by far, but is more necessary for you that I remain in the body. So there's this recognition of to die and to go be with Christ is the ultimate good. But are still things that God has for us to work. And for whatever reason, God has decided that we are his instruments here on earth, and
as out of tune as we are.
Yes, exactly. Or the broken vessels, whatever analogy you want to use, or whatever. But for whatever reason, he has mostly picked humans to do his bidding. And so when we think about, I will say there was a time when I was scared of death. I'll be honest.
I mean, too.
Now I can honestly say, by all means, bring it on. But then I think about my 7 children and my wife who rely on me at least for money.
I think also for a good spiritual leadership.
Yes, hopefully that's a good thing. But they rely on me, and I have a job to do for them, and God still expects me to do that until it's time for him to call me home. And so you have to understand that both of those things at the same time.
Yes. The other thing he says here, which is very interesting, is that it relates to one of the accusations Satan makes against him before God. Job actually admits that what he feared has happened to him now. And this, he's referring to, I've lost everything. I've lost prosperity. I've lost my health. I've lost my children. All that he possesses and all that he has has feared losing that, and it has now happened to him. And so there is at least some truth to the accusation Satan seems to be making. Now, granted, how true it is really just depends on his response continuing further down the line to all of this as well. But it kind of does remind us a little bit, I guess, that the accusations that we face from our accusers, whether it's from Satan, from his minions, or even from just our own self-doubts and our own, self-condemnation, oftentimes there is at least some kernel of truth to it, in that it's relating to some like core fear or core insecurity that we have, this, that, or the other. So it's something to be mindful of, and trying to like, okay, this is true. I did fear this happening, but what else is true? How am I going to respond to this? Who is God still? What, going down those lines as well, rather than just, well, what I feared is true, so now I'm just going to go completely into the muck or whatever from this. So
yeah, and I think his fear of that is, I guess, not in and of itself bad, but what he does with that fear. And ultimately, all the things that God has given us, we should be able to hold loosely, because if all I have is Jesus, that should be enough. Now, in our humanity, that's ridiculously hard. And it's easy to sit on this side of things and not be Job and look at Job and go, well, you're supposed to only hold on to Christ. But that being said, like, it's an understandable response, but it's one that, we have to make sure our trust is in him and in him alone, not in our possessions, not in our family, not in our relationships, not in any positions we have, anything like that. It's solely in him.
Count your blessings and enjoy them, but remember to hold them loosely, and what is ultimately what matters in life.
Absolutely.
So from there, we start getting into the bouncing back and forth. How are we doing on time, I guess, before we start on that?
Let's get into at least the life as. Maybe we stop there.
All right.
We'll see.
We'll cut off the life as again there.
Yeah.
So again, life as responds to Job's whole, I'm seeking death. I really want death. That, and I curse the day that I die. So that's what life as is responding to. He starts with, again, praising Job's character, what all he has done. He says that the upright are not cut before God, that iniquity reaps God's anger, that no one is more pure or righteous than God, and so man is very wicked in the sight of God, essentially. That's what he responds, and so this is Job's counter response to that. And Job starts off claiming that his grief is heavy and that it has caused him to speak rashly. So he admits that, he is very much grieving, which is completely understandable, and that in grief, we can easily speak things that it's like, maybe I didn't mean to quite say it that way, or I spoke too quickly, or this, that, the other. That's reasonable, and that's at least a good moment of self-reflection on him. It's praiseworthy that he's admitting that, maybe I should be slower to speak with all this instead. But then he kind of doubles down and continues on what he was saying in chapter 3, and he says, I really wish God would just destroy me now, and I feel hopeless in all this as well. He ironically accuses the trio of unkindness, deceitfulness, not bringing comfort. Granted, Eliphaz is the only one who's spoken so far, so he's already accusing the other two of being unkind to him, when it's like, look, dude, we just sat here together for a week with you in silence just to try and comfort you here. So again, the accusations kind of start off from Job, not from the other way around.
And maybe I'm getting ahead of us, because maybe he says it elsewhere, but I remember, doesn't he at one point even say, like, if the shoe were on the other foot, I'd bring you so much comfort.
Yep.
Like, it's almost a Donald Trump,
I speak the best comforts, the best truths. I would be able to comfort
if only I were in your position. Yeah. So, and so there's this pride that's clearly there too. And it may be that he's holding on to his own, righteousness that he thinks he has.
Yeah.
So
he already starts making accusations. It's like, you kind of haven't even let them all speak yet. So maybe you should let them all speak first before you start doing that.
Yeah. So then he challenges his friends to show his error and equates them to oppressors. So it just keeps kind of doubling down even more. But what's interesting to me is that he challenges his friends to show his error. I don't think he really wants them to show his error, because I don't think he thinks he has error, though. And I think with more of his responses, we'll see that.
Yeah.
And so, but then to even on top of that, to go further and say equate them to oppressors is just, he's living out of his grief, but he's also just seeing himself as so far above being anything wrong that he can't even see anything reasonably.
Yeah. He feels like he's in a time of hard service and weary nights. Yeah, understandably so. Yes. Again, not everything as much as we're taking a different perspective on this, and like a lot of people see everything that Job ever said was right. I don't think so. But not everything that Job ever said was wrong either, even from our perspective. There's good and bad in each of these guys' responses. I think the last two of the amigos, Bildad and Zophar, generally speak pretty well, actually, but even they didn't go far enough, as we talked about. So there's things to be learned from all these guys as well, and things that they get wrong as well, and we can learn from that. So, so he gets that right. Yes, you are in a time of hard service, weary nights. He feels hopeless. Yep, that's all correct. Life is brief. Yes, we are a vapor in the wind. Our life is a lot shorter than we remember it to be in modern times. And Job says he's not some monster needing tame. I'm not Leviathan that you need to put a hook in my mouth and restrain me or something like that. I mean, we're probably, it could be a little bit of a, you could see that as a little bit of a humility thing. Like, one you can see as, I'm not as evil as like, no, we are as evil as a monster. So there is a point of, we're not as big as monsters as we tend to think we are, and all of that for most people. There are probably some that do need bridling and taming as well, but overall, not the greatest of statements by him there, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think in the dark night of the soul, it's okay to feel hopeless. It's okay to be honest and say, God, I got nothing left. Like, I don't see how we're going to get out of this. I don't know.
I know those who are going through it right now and who are listeners of this, and by the time they get to this one, that things have changed for them, but it's hard to keep enduring through that. Bible does say, do not grow weary in doing good, but it says not to do that because we often do, because it's hard to keep persevering through all of that. So, he says he speaks without restraint and with bitterness, almost boastfully so. Like, I'm just going to say whatever's on my mind and I'll say it however I want, essentially. And he says to God that God terrifies him, Job, and that just leave me alone. You scare me to death, God. Just go bother someone else at this point. Just leave me alone, and just don't deal with me anymore. Which to some degree is understandable, but again is also you should be turning toward God. You should be putting your trust in Him, not turning away from it, turning back to with all of this instead, and pressing into Him in these times. So,
so ultimately, his end response in this point to Eliphaz is, ask why God test him. Again, does not ask God himself, but just in general as a question of why does God test him, and if he has sinned and still desires death. So, Job is not in a good place. Again, understandably so. But, I think back to the one before this, that God terrifies Job. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But ask him to leave you alone.
This is a different type of fear we're talking about here.
This is just, being terrified is a lot different than just the fear of the Lord. So, So that's the end of that section. We still have the first responses to Bildad and Zophar to go through, but we kind of want to keep these a little short and sweet because we're going through a lot of pretty dense stuff, and we want to give everybody time to really ruminate on it and think through it. And also it gives us a little bit more time to edit it in a way that we would like.
So much easier to edit when it's around half an hour.
Yes. So, a little bit self-serving, but realistically though, it will help hopefully give time to really think through and digest and hopefully read through it even maybe a couple times, because it is a lot of chapters, but it's a dense read, but it's not like a hard read. It's pretty easy to kind of just go through because it's kind of conversational.
Yes. So, it may again seem ironic that we're doing this when we're trying to do Bible book overviews, but again, trying to give you an overview, but the traditional overview of Job, I think, leads down the wrong pathways as we've talked about before. So we're doing an overview that hopefully gets you a little bit more in depth to see what's really going on here without just literally reading through all of Job here on the podcast. So hopefully that's helped for you guys. You can let us know in the comments, though we'll be long past it by the time we get to it. So whatever. But we would love to hear your comments on it as well. And hopefully it's helped some of you guys wrestle through all the complications that come with Job's.
Yeah. And point out things if you're like, I don't think you guys are quite, your guys a little off on that, and help us think through it harder. Because one thing that I know for Nathan is very humble, and that he'll listen to any kind of that. And I try to do the same as well, and help us ruminate on it ourselves a little differently. Maybe there is something we're missing. So please, we'd love to hear you guys, what you think about it, and maybe, even help us think about it in a different way, or something we may be missing. So
if you disagree with us, you're heretics.
Wait, we're Catholics now?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We'll communicate you all. No.
All tongue in cheek.
Yes. So any other thoughts?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Well, we'll continue to pick up with the responses to the Amigos next time. But in the meantime, thank you all for joining us. This has been Discerning Faith. The Lord be with you and bless you.